the NFL draft, it's still far away. I know that we frown on draft speculation generally on the show, but earlier this week, we heard some interesting tidbits from Mark Ryan, a radio host in the Carolinas, ESPN Upstate, about how the Panthers are trying to pick between not Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, but C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Here's a clip from our time with Mark Ryan earlier this week.
They give up a historical amount to move up to number one, and then don't seem to have a plan for what they want to do with number one. There were reports that Dave Tepper liked Bryce Young. Frank Reich only likes bigger quarterbacks. Frank Reich seems to be winning that power struggle right now. There are reports they could trade down again. That would seem to imply they're in love with Anthony Richardson, because you wouldn't trade down if you're going after Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud.
Ryan went a little bit further, and you heard it for a second there, saying that there is a back and forth going on in the Panthers organization about who they take at quarterback. And as you heard there, Tepper wanted Bryce Young. Frank Reich probably wants a taller quarterback. Yesterday, though, on NFL Live, Adam Schefter came aboard the show, and I don't think this qualifies as a report. I don't think it can, because now I'm completely confused. Schefter thinks Bryce Young is the favorite for Carolina, but this sounds like speculation, does it not? Here's Schefter.
And I think going into the process of evaluating the quarterbacks, I think that Bryce Young is the favorite to become the number one overall pick, and they will go in with an really.
I think it's funny to hear Laura Rutledge jump in. Schefter seemed a little annoyed. Really? After Rutledge asks for some clarification, Schefter's going to confuse the hell out of you with this. Here is the remainder of Schefter's take that I don't know that I buy into, because it's just weird. Adam Schefter.
Let me say it this way. I think Bryce Young is to the Panthers what Mac Jones was to the 49ers when they traded up. They traded up with the idea that they really liked Mac Jones, and then they went through the process and wound up on Trey Lance. I think in this particular case, this team moved up with the idea that Bryce Young was a guy that they loved. They also really like C.J. Stroud. He's definitely got support within the organization, and we'll see what transpires during the course of evaluations. But I think at the beginning of the process, it starts out with Bryce Young as the favorite.
If you're Adam Schefter, in that moment, what you just said to everybody is that I believe the Panthers traded up to the number one overall spot for a guy that they might not draft. That's it in a nutshell. That's what he said. Because he's making a comparison to the San Francisco 49ers trading up to the third overall pick a couple of years ago to take Mac Jones, only to take Trey Lance. How did it get to that point where they chose Trey Lance over Mac Jones? I don't know. Honestly, makes sense to me as a New England Patriots fan, because Mac Jones is a game manager, best case scenario. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but I didn't like what I saw last year. And there's not a lot of stuff that he brings to the table that's special. At the very least, Trey Lance can scoot, but that's really all you got. And we watched Trey Lance against the David Culley-led Houston Texans back in the at the end of the 2021 season. Ooh, that wasn't a good performance by him.
That was a tough one, Paul.
Right. Like, that doesn't make you feel very good, Joe, about Trey Lance going forward.
No, but like Mac Jones doesn't. I kind of get the theory behind they wanted Mac Jones, because look what they did with Brock Purdy.
Right.
Like, if Mac Jones is the quarterback with the 49ers last year, how good are they?
I think they're
With
in a
Kyle
better
Shanahan?
spot. I think they're in a better spot. I think a big part of the struggles for Mac Jones last year was the offensive system. But I also think that there were some limitations with Mac Jones. This is the strangest, and I'll say in quotation marks, report that I think Schefter has ever given. And I think whenever he speaks, you should be looking at Schefter as speaking as a report. I think this is going to happen. I would hope that thought is more than just speculation. I would hope that is an educated, not quite report, but guess. But still, it's an educated guess. And it's such a weird thing to say. And a lot of people online were freaking out from the Texans' perspective. Oh, the Texans screwed this up. Look, I think they're going to be fine with either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I'm not the biggest CJ Stroud fan, but I think that he has all of the traits that you want physically from a quarterback, and he has shown that he can play consistently, where Anthony Richardson, who's really exciting, hasn't. At the same time, Bryce Young is clearly the best quarterback in last year's draft. I think no matter what Carolina does with that number 1 overall pick, I think we will be satisfied with whoever the Texans end up with at number 2. And I don't think we're ever going to truly know who their favorite guy was, but I do think it's between Young and Stroud. And I don't believe, based off of this Schefter report, that the Panthers, who I guess traded up for Bryce Young, are still going to take Bryce Young. I'm of the belief that there's a back and forth between Frank Reich, who's always had tall quarterbacks, and Dave Tepper, who just looks at Bryce Young and says, but this is the guy.
I still think there's an Anthony Richardson shot in here, too.
I don't know.
Like, I heard Todd McShay on Ryan Russillo's podcast.
I listened to that, too.
And he kind of threw it out there, too, where it's like they might love Anthony Richardson a little bit. And I'm like, what are they doing?
You're going to be hard-pressed to rationalize to your fan base that Richardson should have been taken first overall. Trading all that to get up to the number 1 spot and take Richardson, I don't know. And I mean, Carolina did sign Andy Dalton, so I guess that's the caretaker as Anthony Richardson learns the ropes of the NFL, should they make that decision. But I'm skeptical that it's going to be Richardson. I think it's between Young and Stroud, but I really think that Frank Reich wouldn't have taken this job if they were going to give him the quarterback he doesn't want, and I think it's more likely that he believes in Stroud than he does in Young.
I agree. I think it's going to be Stroud first overall, which I guess I'm opposite of you. I do like Stroud. Like I thought when Bobby Slowick was talking about kind of like a distributor, like a point guard for the offense, like I felt like that's Stroud 101. But Bryce Young can be that too, so like I'm good either way. Like I think Stroud's going to be the first pick.
The thing with Stroud is I wonder, and he's dealt with a lot of actual adversity in his life, like his dad's in jail. But I think from a Bryce Young perspective, that wasn't a good Alabama team he was playing with last year. He still looked special. The year before, you saw what he was able to do. It's really just about the height. And there are a lot of people who are throwing height to the side when it comes to Young. Will Nick Caserio do that? I wonder, but I think if they had their pick, I think they would want Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. We'll see, of course. Thanks for adding absolutely nothing except for confusion to this discourse, Adam Schefter. It surely won't be terrible the next 5 weeks talking about this.